Thank you. So welcome. We are going to have a conversation today. You're welcome to interact, ask questions. We've got 3 docs here, all focused on in the mental health world with different backgrounds and expertises. Dr. Nicole, Dr. E, and Dr. Lilli there. Thank goodness for my techies here. Otherwise, this won't be happening.
She's the tech.
Yes, and the youngest. How ironic. So today we want to chat. A lot of our world is very different than what's most well known. I feel like nearly everyone out there is very familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT, talk therapy. Probably everyone who's heard of that, right? Very familiar. And we are not here to dismiss, disregard, throw anything or anyone under the bus. We're simply here to offer suggestions, hope, and education. So if you have gotten great results with that type of therapy, wonderful. We're thrilled for you. Keep doing it. Props. That's great. For those people struggling with anxiety or depression or self-limiting thoughts or maybe harmful behaviors like addictions and really critical thoughts, perfectionistic tendencies, even if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and it's like, why can I not get over this? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to find those toxic men anymore, or those, I don't want to do those addictive behaviors, but it's like you're just banging your head against the wall, then this is for you. Listen up. If you're the type of person that you love to verbally process, you like to express yourself, and maybe you don't have somebody safe or unbiased in your life that you feel like you can do that with, then talk therapy may be a great option for you. If you also want help reframing, or you just need an expert perspective to say, you know what, have you thought about it in this way? Oh, I didn't think about that. Then talk therapy may be great for you. If that's not what you're looking for, then I want all of us, but especially these ladies, to share more on maybe why that hasn't shifted things for you, or maybe why you haven't noticed the drastic changes. So, what do you think? Anything you want to add?
No, I think you did a great job.
All right, well, thank you. Take it away.
Great introduction. Yeah, so as you mentioned with talk therapy, it's useful if you just want to talk it out, but sometimes talking about the same pattern will actually cause you to reinforce those same pathways in your brain, and it just strengthens that idea of, well, I'm not enough. Every time this happens, that means that. And of course, your talk therapist should be able to provide you some sort of reflection and questions to seek out a deeper understanding. But like everybody, not all talk therapists are the same. And some just allow you to vent, and maybe that's what you need at one point, but it doesn't always get you closer to, you know, breaking that old habit or that old cycle and getting you to create a new healthier habit, a healthier mindset.
Right, and sometimes talking about the things that were upsetting or traumatic in your life can actually re-trigger the same emotional responses from the original event. So you end up being re-triggered, feeling exactly the same as you did, like, let's say 15 years ago, and then sometimes talking about it even more causes more anxiety. You might go home after therapy and feel like you're lacking energy, and then like all you want to do is fall asleep. It's because your body went into the same trauma response as the original event. So sometimes, right, it's like me, for instance, I started with talk therapy when I needed therapy, but I kept feeling like I was always more anxious or depressed afterwards. So I realized that like talking about my issues over and over again and trying to consciously reframe something that happened emotionally for me didn't work for me. So when things happen to us that we view as trauma, or our brain kind of registers as trauma, we get a feeling first, an emotion comes up, the body records the emotion, sends a signal to the brain, and then it creates a pathway. So for me, because I felt a certain way in the beginning, my answer then lied in, then how can I get the feeling dislodged out of my body? Meaning that like I felt it subconsciously, it created this pathway. So logically, I know it doesn't make any sense, but I can't talk myself out of something that began with a feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's a really good point that you brought up. For me, I feel like it was a little bit different. So I did talk therapy too for a little bit, and I was a huge proponent of it before. But I realized that talking about it, I was able to like logically process what was happening. I knew exactly like, oh, this is why I felt this way. This is probably where it came from. But I didn't actually experience my emotions in my body, and I thought that I was.
Yeah.
But it was all in my head, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, and sometimes trauma causes us to disconnect from how we feel or the emotions that we're supposed to feel in specific situations because it was a safety mechanism, so we can numb or not feel or feel very disconnected from our bodies because it was trying to save us, and we were always looking out for perceived threats after an original trauma. So sometimes we're very disconnected from our body, and so talk therapy would not get you back in touch with how you feel. If that makes sense. So then, like, you could look at things like somatic therapy, QNRT, NET, because they're allowing you to create a new pathway between brain and body where you get to experience emotion that you might have been disconnected from before. So it's very hard to say, like, oh, I'm grieving. You know, you can go numb when you're grieving, but really, where do you feel it in your body? Some people can't tell me because they're so disconnected because it was what saved them. So not feeling anything is what saved them. So sometimes we need something other than talk. We need a movement or a breath or a muscle test or something that's somatic, meaning body-based, to get back to our body.
And I don't know who to give this proper credit to, but I loved what I heard long ago. We cannot resolve subconscious issues or blocks with our conscious mind. So you probably heard me say before, 5% is conscious. That's the intellectual part, the thinking, the logical reasoning that they're talking about. Subconscious is 95%. So we can't resolve that 95% by working on that 5%. And you phrased it another way.
Yeah, right. Like we can't solve an emotional problem through thinking. Emotions and thoughts are two different energies. So I can, like Dr. Lilli said, we can logically all day put the pieces together of why it might have happened. But more than likely, even if you figured out why you have a pattern, you'll get triggered down the line, and then you'll think like, oh my gosh, I just went to all of this talk therapy. I know why it's happening, so why is it still happening? Because it's in your body. It's not in your brain. It is in your brain through a pathway, but it's being held in your body. The original event's being held in your body. You feel everything in life. So that's why we're talking about alternative modalities of therapy.
Yeah, I think that's also another good point that you mentioned is that sometimes that can turn into a trauma response, is that avoidance by thinking about it. And that's what it was for me. It's so funny because I just made a YouTube video on like moving from your head to your heart and like being able to actually feel your feelings. So that like saved you at one point of just like thinking about it and not feeling those emotions because maybe they were too overwhelming or too extreme. But luckily there are other options where you don't even have to like fully experience all the things that you were trying to avoid, but you can clear it in a like smooth and easeful way. That's a bit of a
gentle and fast.
Yeah.
So we each employ different methods of alternative, what we would consider alternative therapy. So like for instance, mine is breath work and movement based. So it's very specific breath works, very specific movements and sound combined to move a traumatic response out of the body and to kind of like clean the emotional junk up out from within. And you could come to me and I don't need to know one word about your story, nothing. I'm just going to ask you symptomatically what's showing up in your body. That tells me its own story. Like if you're not sleeping or you're having gut issues or your heart always feels like it's racing, that tells me very specifics about how emotion is held in your body. So you don't have to say anything to me. And then they operate in a bit of a different way than mine.
Yeah. So one of the modalities I use here is called NET. Probably a lot of patients that have been coming to Hope and Healing are very familiar with it. But it is a process. It's a stress-reducing technique that helps you let go and release the stress around limiting beliefs, past traumas, body symptoms that are even caused by things that your body's holding on to. And so it's a mind-body technique where we use muscle testing to guide the treatment and then clear the stuff that's coming up. So again, with that, we don't need to know your whole story. We don't need you to re-experience the things that have happened in the past. You don't have to talk extensively about it, but we can just clear it through the body.
And basically, we both do NET. Another option is quantum neuro reset therapy, shortened QNRT, and nobody remembers that, so I don't expect anyone here to either. And in essence, the end goal is the same, really, for all of our work. I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say the end goal is to balance the nervous system, decrease stress, move the unprocessed emotion, stress, or trauma through your body out. And so your body doesn't have to hold on to that. And then you get to see those fast, long-term results because we're working with your body and we're really listening to, okay, body, where is this stuck? What do you need to resolve? And we're not doing it through the thought. And I have an example of something. The first time I had this technique, NET, I was a complete skeptic. Muscle testing, bogus, unscientific, you're pushing my arm too hard, this is ridiculous, but I was desperate because I had a bit of a breakdown in med school. And so I went to the therapist because she was free. I was desperate. And she knew I wasn't as much of a fan of talk therapy, had done it, hadn't seen the results I wanted. And so I was trying to make sense up here, and I got my own way of healing because my body was like, step aside, woman, this is not working for you anymore. You've done this for 30 plus years. And we're getting your attention by giving you this little, not so little breakdown. So listen to me now, okay? Let your brain step aside. And so I finally did because something came up from an age that I was convinced that did not happen at that age. And then I realized, oh, I guess that did happen at that age. But my body knew all along. And so I'm just encouraging anybody listening, if you are leading with this only, get out of your own way because you're probably really smart and you know yourself really well and you have lots of great tools and read great books and podcasts. Like, you're not short on resources, but if you're not seeing the results that you want and deserve, come at it through the side door, a different perspective, a different angle, more with your body instead of just your brain.
No, because your body needs to learn that it's safe in situations where feelings feel similar to an original event. And so these types of modalities create new pathways between the brain and the body, and then they give your whole being a sense of safety so that you're not always hypervigilant and looking out for like danger. That's a very subconscious thing, right? If you're a person who's in your head a lot, you're probably overanalyzing and hypervigilant. And that's your nervous system's response to trying to mitigate danger so that you're not taken off your feet again, because trauma is feeling like you're taken off your feet, right? It comes out of nowhere, it kind of ambushes you. And so being hypervigilant, always overthinking, that's you trying to kind of thwart any threat that might come up, but it doesn't work.
Well, and control. Like,
yeah,
I think all of us at some point in our lives are still, I don't like the word freak, but I'm going to use control freak. And it's our effort to like make everything okay and just be safe. And that doesn't really work either.
that doesn't work.
We found out the hard way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when you're in that like super like dissociative state, even like you can't think your way out of that because you have no capacity to do that at that point. And something that we've seen a lot for sure is patients who think like, oh, I thought I got over that. I thought I worked through that. And it's like, no, your body's still holding on to it. And then through our different modalities, we're able to clear it without having to think through it.
And also like thinking of like healing as a journey instead of like a destination, because sometimes people come and they're like, it came up again, but because there was a new situation, new players in the play, right? Different things got triggered. So it's always a journey, like trying to peel onion layers until you can get down to the center core of like how and why did this show up and like where did it lie in the body and the original event. So it's also like It's not a one and done. Like, I know you might feel better after one session, but that doesn't mean you'll go through life untriggered ever, because you'll be triggered. Somebody will say something and it will land wrong, and that doesn't mean you're not healing. That just means you're human.
Yes. Yes. And we can see miraculous results, but like she said, it's not like we're going to brush our teeth once and be like, I'm good. No cavities. Because we're continually eating and drinking and salivating, and we're continually going through life and feeling and interacting with humans who are also imperfect and have emotions and flaws, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else or any questions from anybody?
Yeah, put them in the chat. I don't know. Somebody's actually put something in here. No, it's just a link somewhere.
A lot of ways.
Lots of ways.
Lots of ways.
If you have questions, feel free to reach out and comment, or if you want something more private or personal, we can post our contact info. Anything else you guys want to touch on or discuss?
Yeah, what's also great is that sometimes, well, all the time I would say, is that these modalities that work with the body go great with talk therapy or with working on the mindset. Yeah. And it just makes those things that you're working on in therapy or the mindset work easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an either or, all or none. We're not saying that what we offer is better or the best. We're simply offering options because everybody deserves to heal. I think we all believe that. We've had our personal experiences of growth and struggles. And I know, and believe that they do too, we want that for everybody. We just want everybody to live their best life and realize that they're worthy of healing, and there's options. So if whatever you're doing isn't working, there are options.
Yeah. And to always do what resonates with you and what your heart tells you is right. Like, you gave an example, but for my example, I'm a somatic therapist, and I have my own somatic therapist. Therapist always has a therapist, by the way. You can ask any therapist. But I also have a talk therapist in my back pocket, because every once in a while, I need to just verbally get it out of my body. And I use it as that's my tool to, like, when I don't have anyone else to talk about the issue with, and I need to get it out of my body, where, like, words, sometimes I can write it, but then sometimes it's helpful for me to just get it out. I don't need her to say anything. She doesn't do anything but listen. I need somebody just to listen to me. But she's brilliant at it. She's a good space holder. And then I go back after that, and then I do my somatic tools, because sometimes just talking about it's like, and so, like, then I work it all out emotionally afterwards. But I do, use, once in a while, I go right back to it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it will bring up things that you're like, oh, now I'm aware of this thing that I didn't even know I was still holding on to. And then you can process that in another way, whether it's journaling or meditating or going to a therapist.
Options. So many options.
But choose something if you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Just find something.
Yeah. Holistic approach, I think, is always the best.
Yeah. And I think, like, for everybody, it becomes customized. What works for you, and how can you combine it? If you find a couple of things, like, how can you combine it in a way that makes you feel whole, embodied, and safe? And so there's no one size fits all for any one human in the world, especially when it comes to therapy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Post any questions below, and thanks for listening. Have a great one.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi.